you go for it, and then I'll go in. So this week we're going to be talking about Elstree 1976. Not like a sports commentary.
And welcome back to the Cinema Minute. It's Grand Lead. Fuck, don't do that. Just start.
Holy shit! That's not a moon.
That's no moon. Hi, welcome back to the Cinema Minute. I'm Chris Allen.
I'm Grant Robson.
This week we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to talk about a documentary this week, but it's connected, I suppose, with one of our favourite topics, one we've made a few episodes about now.
Yeah.
The documentary is called Elstree 1976, and the subject matter is about the original Star Wars film.
Yeah, this one's directed by a documentary filmmaker called John Spira, who recently did a film. It was a couple of years ago now.
So anyone can play guitar.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, sort of his background in documentary filmmaking. It's an interesting one, this. It originally came out as a Kickstarter project a few years back in 2014.
Yeah. Which I believe you kickstarted.
Yeah, so I contributed to that as well. And last year, when I was down in London, I actually went to the premiere at the London Film Festival of it as well. The reason we're talking about it this week is because actually the film is about to get its American release. They've got a distributor, so it's getting a cinematic release there. It's also getting some Q&A screenings there too, and released on iTunes and Amazon. So if you like the look of this one, make sure you check it out too. The interesting thing about this is sort of the British release, I suppose, is still to be determined. We'll get into that in a moment, but they do have some Q&A screenings booked in for June. So if you're watching this at the time, do check out those screenings and do get yourself along as well. Because again, when I saw this film, I had a really good time as a Star Wars fan with it.
Yeah, I'm going to hold my hands up and say I haven't seen this one yet, but I do kind of know the premise. I watched a few things on it and read a couple of articles. Essentially, it's all the side characters from the Star Wars universe. All the characters in the masks, the aliens, even Darth Vader's in there as well. It looks like a really interesting documentary, really provoking if you're a big fan of Star Wars, because you get to hear all these set stories and things like that. And Chris, who I'll tell you yourself has seen it, says it's a fascinating documentary. But what were your thoughts on it, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, just to expand on that a little first. So again, the title Elstree 1976, Elstree Studios in London, where they filmed several of the sort of set pieces in Star Wars, namely for the original film, the cantina scene, the Death Star scenes, and the Rebel base at the end of the film. So that's where most of these characters come from. And the documentary itself follows 10 of these actors around, giving interviews now, talking about their experience. But again, it's not your Harrison Fords and Carrie Fishers and Mark Hamill's. It's those people who are, not the A-list characters, but maybe the even C and D list sort of characters.
Integral to the film.
Yeah, people who know Star Wars will instantly know these characters. So again, we've got, Greedo is in there,
Boba
Big Starfighter, and Boba Fett appears later. Obviously not in Star Wars, but from Empire Strikes Back. Another big one behind the mask, Jeremy Bullock.
Behind the mask.
And that's the interesting thing. So again, maybe the first sort of third of this film is about those on-set stories. And that's the reason that a lot of people get hooked by this documentary, especially at a time when Star Wars is so big in popular culture. The initial aim with this Kickstarter was to come out just ahead of the release of The Force Awakens to sort of capitalise on it. But the reason it's been delayed, I guess, is kind of some of the legal trials and tribulations that have went along with being an independent, low budget Kickstarter documentary, but dealing with quite a big subject matter, dealing with the studio system, but also dealing with distributors and stuff who've dropped out. Again, the backstory on, the sort of journey this film's been through is kind of interesting as for one of the film itself, the people into the sort of film industry. And, the director, Hank Stars, did some really interesting posts on Kickstarter where you can kind of look into the history of that too. But back to the documentary, again, the first third kind of focuses on what maybe the core appeal of this film is, and that is, those on-set stories. The little bits where they were hanging out with Mark Hamill on set of, they were unsure about George Lucas for his first time, this, relatively new American director who just came off American Graffiti, but now he's doing a big space film and it looks cheesy, and all stories that you've heard to an extent before. Some of those like troubles on set and the like trepidation, like, oh, is it going to be rubbish, sort of cheap Doctor Who sort of knockoff, or is it, you know, what it turns out to be?
The greatest film of all time.
Yeah, you know, something that kicks off this series, which obviously is still sort of flourishing now. And you know, that's those bits of a film, whilst, you know, probably the most interesting, generally, are kind of it's a funny one, and again, where some of the current reviews that are coming out are mostly focused on, you know, this is why you get in this film, to hear people talking about, I was the Stormtrooper who knocked his head on the deck, or, you know, I was the guy inside the Darth Vader costume, David Prowse. I
think for me that sounded like one of the most interesting parts, but life after Star Wars is a really interesting concept that you don't really consider for a lot of actors and things like that, especially like D-list actors, as you say. What was that part of the film?
I mean, and that's where the documentary goes next, really, and sort of where some people's reviews are not as keen on it. But personally, I found it quite interesting. You know, again, being quite a big Star Wars fan, you do pick up those on-set stories, and you hear little whispers about it, and you know, maybe, you know, I've seen a couple of these people at conventions and stuff before. Again, Jeremy Bulloch, who's Boba Fett, Paul Blake, who's in the Greedo costume. You know, you kind of see these people around, and occasionally hear them tell the stories of, you know,
but who shot first?
Well, I assume that's always a question that he gets asked at every convention and every appearance and stuff like that. But you know, we'll do both versions, so you can like edit your own version of this. If you're
on your age,
like if you're Team Han or Team Greedo, that would have been the Twitter campaign. If that was a
hashtag Greedo,
hashtag Team Greedo. But so anyway, the documentary goes on to this territory where it deals with life after Star Wars, and you know, Harrison Ford, we all know about that. We all know about, you know, the main core actors and kind of what they did. But these people, you know, where did they go? And to me, that's quite an interesting and quite heartwarming element of it. The trailer for this film kind of sets it up that there might be some drama between them and stuff like that, and it kind of goes into the convention side of things, and to an extent it's quite heartwarming that, you know, there's fans passionate to get, you know, an X-Wing pilot's autograph and stuff, and it's a kind of slightly heartbreaking as well. But you know, they were really good friends with Harrison Ford on set, but then he goes and
moves on in life, essentially.
Biggest, you know, one of the biggest actors of all time, and they're kind of doing little conventions in the back end of wherever.
Well, that's what I thought. I thought it was quite disappointing, actually, the fact that there's kind of this animosity between the bigger actors and the smaller actors, like they're kind of taking on their turf sort of thing. Yeah,
that is a little thing in the documentary itself. And it's quite interesting. I think the trailer plays it up as being more of a conflict, where in the documentary it's interesting more than anything else. But again, you know, that sort of difference between, is this person an extra, but this person had a speaking part, and then, you know, then the actual sort of
the
higher up actor, and there's this sort of hierarchy there. But for the most part, it is really good natured. And I think that's kind of what this documentary as a whole is a lot of. You know, it's kind of just nice.
Yeah,
and that's sort of, and that's the thing. You know, it's talking about something we're all very passionate about, especially in this community. In this community, you know, the actors generally kind of like look back on it fondly and stuff like that. And even when there is that little bit of drama, or some drama with Dave Prowse and his sort of like connections with Lucasfilm sort of being severed afterward, you know, there is that sort of there is that element of drama there. But for the most part, it's just nice.
Good.
And you know, it's just kind of like learning about these people who've, you know, had a hand in something that is so influential to pop culture today. And you know, I think as much as it's great to get those extra Star Wars stories, and that's what's going to draw you in, like, you do end up coming away being interested in these people, be it, you know, kind of like, oh, you know, like, I know something about them now. You know, you get where they came from and where they've been since. And whilst I can understand some of those, you know, sort of mixed reviews why they're not as keen on those bits, is a human documentary. That's quite interesting, you know. And again, it's something, I don't know if you saw the Troll 2 documentary. Again, that's been around. Again, you know, sort of a classic horror film, but considered like sort of a cheesy one. But a guy who does all the convention circuits. In the documentary for that, what really bothered me is how he was kind of snarky about the convention. You know, he's kind of like, oh god, these weirdos coming up in you know, like Captain Kirk uniforms and stuff like that. But you know, from this you get the sense that there's a really nice community. Good. And you know, they kind of, that means something. Good. And excellent. You know, I think that's what the Star Wars community is. Again, you know, having gone to conventions and stuff before, kind of, you know, as much as we're even a part of it now, discussing it online and stuff.
Exactly.
You know, there is that real, that heartwarming sense of community. And I think if that's something you're interested in, not just watching cool lightsaber fights, obviously that's a big part of Star Wars, but kind of everything that goes with it. I think this documentary is something that's really worth investigating, really worth your time. You know, it's a love letter to this franchise that we care about so much, but also, you know, given due to people you maybe don't think about. You don't think about the third Stormtrooper to the left.
Absolutely.
And you know, it's kind of that thing, and it's just kind of pleasant. If I know that doesn't make it sound really exciting, but again,
I don't think it should be. To be honest, I think appreciating those characters that have brought you one of the best science fiction films of all time. Like I'm always interested by the Star Wars because there's very few people you'll find that hate it once they've watched them. Even when the prequel trilogy came out, it was absolutely vilified by proper hardcore Star Wars fans, but there's still a following for it. And I love the idea of kind of making a film about the lesser known characters. It's not about the big stars, it's not about the amazing money that went into it. It's about the little people that made it happen, and I think that's a really interesting concept for a documentary.
That's it, and there are so many stories out there about Harrison Ford, you know, saying the lines are all gobbledygook at the time, and you know, like Alec Guinness being on set saying it was rubbish, and you know, Peter Cushing on set wearing slippers. You know, all those kind of stories have been told 1,000 times. So it is interesting to see that other side, but also, you know, you also still know about Harrison Ford and you know about Alec Guinness. So knowing about these other people who are, you know, a smaller part, but kind of integral as well. You know, I think that's visually one of the things that the documentary does really nicely. You know, they have every character with the action figure. So, you know, it's, again, you know, he's got the little Boba Fett with him, or he's got, you know, the little X-Wing pilot with him, or the Stormtrooper with him. And it's stuff like that where it's just kind of, you know, sweet. And again, like, it speaks to you if you grew up with those action figures. Like, you know those people in the background. And now, watching this documentary, you know them a bit in real life too. And, you know, they're all kind of accessible at these conventions and stuff. So it's kind of a nice little... Yeah, that's the thing. It's, again, the most... obvious thing I would say about it, and what I keep coming back to, is it's just kind of nice and heartwarming, and you know, kind of a love letter to something that we all love, and something, you know. And I think on that, if that sounds like how you feel about Star Wars, I think it could be worth your time.
Well, it's out this week. It's out this month, sorry, in America, but there's still a bit of a delay for the UK release. We'll have more on that as it comes. Yeah,
obviously you can find them on all the social networks. Find out the sort of history of their ongoing situation with Elstree 1976 on the Kickstarter page. Yeah. Where again, John Spiro, the director, and Hank Stars, the producer, are kind of keeping people totally up to date. Kickstarter.
Very well.
Plans going out and stuff like that too. But also, you know, you can find them at all the regular social network places for more details for that American tour, the American release, the UK tour, and hopefully Q&A. Soon that UK release, probably too. But whilst you're on all those social networks, I guess you can also get in touch with us. Let us know your thoughts on Elstree 1976 if you've had a chance to see it so far. And we've really appreciated all that feedback we have been getting. So if you're one of our new followers, we're glad to have you on board too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for all the views and thanks for all the subscriptions as well. Please let us know what you're thinking in the comments box on YouTube, and also you can find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram now as well.
Yeah, and again, subscribe and get in touch, and we'll see you soon for more of all the sort of geeky stuff we talk about. The same sort of things as well. We'll be talking about them all, you know what it's like.
We'll just sit in these seats 24/7.
This is it. This is what we'd be doing it if we weren't filming this. Okay, thanks very much guys. See you soon. Good night.
Bye.